And we're back again with another edition of the Cosmic Crossfire. It's Gerald back again. Thank you so much for tuning in again tuning in each and every week. Well, he's back again. He's smiling. If you're watching YouTube, he's smiling and laughing it up right now. It is my good friend, the man, the myth, the legend behind Rob McCallum Films. Check out all the great projects he has there today on robmccallumfilms.com. But he's also one of the brain trust behind the great Kickstarter project, Galaxy Hope. It is an unofficial Star Wars documentary with all the proceeds that are far as everything that's collected as a Star Wars collectible chase over a course of a year will be going towards the Children's Health Foundation. It is a great cause. It is a great project to back, and you can back it today on Kickstarter. Just check out Galaxy Hope. It is the man that wants to go ahead and make this project happen. It is my good friend, Rob McCallum. What's up, man?
Heidi ho, here once again. Excited to talk about a ton of Crossfire stuff. There is a lot of stuff going on. Rob McCallum Films. Galaxy of Hope is still upon us, and we really need everybody's help to plunk down 10, 15, 20 bucks to be a part of the journey. This is another pop culture quest, very much in the vein of Nintendo Quest, which we talk about quite often on the show. But this one has some really great stakes involved. This one, every dollar, every collectible is going to make a direct impact on the lives of these kids who don't get to live a normal life like you and I had maybe growing up. We get to make their life a little bit more digestible. So Andy Morrison, our ambassador, goes to the hospital once a month, sometimes twice a month, every 3 weeks for blood transfusions. And that's got to be a pretty down and dark thing to do. So wouldn't it be nice if she always had something to look forward when she got there? And that's what our mission is going to do. It's going to impact the Child Life Program from the Children's Health Foundation. And we need your help to get this film happening. The auction will happen either way, but the film will spread the word. It will give travel dollars to collect all this awesome Star Wars pop culture memorabilia that goes in this auction. It'll be the biggest Star Wars auction of its kind, and it's going to raise a lot of awareness and a lot of dollars for the kids that need it.
That it will. And you can help support this project today by going to Kickstarter and choosing Galaxy of Hope and choose a tier and selecting Galaxy of Hope, choosing a tier and making this happen. And without your help, it's not going to happen. But we know you can have just $10, $15, $20 out there. That'll get everything started, and the Galaxy of Hope can come to fruition in all of its glory. Well, Rob,
that's right.
That's right indeed. Rob, there's also a lot of other great stuff to talk about in the realm of pop culture. So pray tell, Rob, what's on your mind when it comes to pop culture?
Well, a couple things up this week. This is, I don't know, have these become predictable? Or I think the Crossfire is pretty potpourri-ish, as Jeopardy might label it. We never really know what we're talking about. So I've got three interesting topics. First up is kind of a question I'm going to pose to you, because I thought this article was interesting that I found on Slash Film. And the question is, what's crazier? So you've got to answer the question, what's crazier, okay? And you get the choice between two options. This involves some finances that were recently revealed on some motion picture, some big motion picture properties. Okay, so what's crazier? Robert Downey Jr. getting paid $8 million for about 8 minutes in Spider-Man Homecoming, or The Rock making $22 million for a film called Red Notice, plus an extra $1 million for him to push it on a social media account.
And I didn't hear about Red Notice. Enlighten me on Red Notice.
Red Notice is best described as an art heist film. He is only attached and is slated to make $22 million pay or play, which means he's getting it either way.
So it hasn't even yet become a reality.
It hasn't shot. It hasn't nothing.
You know what? If I was a studio, that $22 million looks pretty bad right now, doesn't it?
It's a lot on the books, if you ask me. It's a lot on the books.
For Downey Jr. and the $8 million for 8 minutes, that to me, obviously makes more sense because of the fact that it's a lot of the reasoning behind Tom Holland's character in Spider-Man Homecoming is because of what Robert Downey Jr. does and who he is in that film. So a lot of the motivation factor is there for him. I know with Josh, he has said on numerous occasions that he thought it went a little bit overboard with Tom Holland just trying to go ahead and appease Tony Stark, Peter Parker trying to appease Tony Stark throughout the whole picture, but it does give the general audience I guess, a kind of a foundation for a basis for the new wave of Spider-Man movies come about, and then the fact that it also anchors the Spider-Man films going forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's one way they did it. So I think that was money better spent, and obviously it translated into the box office earnings for Spider-Man Homecoming as well.
Well, I think that's the cost of connecting this massive thing that you've built, and you just got to swallow it. It's like a franchise cost, right? When you buy a McDonald's, when you buy a Starbucks, there's that franchise fee that you've got to pay just to be part of the group. You got to put the money. Look at the Las Vegas Golden Knights or the Vegas Golden Knights. $500 million just to be a part of the NHL before a dollar gets spent on uniforms and players and any of that stuff. It's the cost to do business before business. And I think Sony had to kind of swallow that they knew they had to bring some of their stuff, some of the Marvel stuff into their world, just like Marvel was probably willing to pony up a really nice IP license to get Spider-Man into Civil War. So I think it probably went a little both ways, depending on, whose pocket it ultimately went into, but there were some additional costs on both sides that each side paid to make it happen. So the fans really benefited on that one, obviously. As far as this other film that is already escaping me, Red Notice.
See, it hasn't been promoted yet by The Rock, so
no, they probably maybe have not paid the $1 million social media fee. It's The Rock is kind of like a huge superstar right now. He is the biggest action star out there, but he can do more than action, which is really nice and versatile. He's the kind of action star that you can put into a film and get away with more than explosions, cheesy one-liners, and physical action. It's the cost of doing business for that movie. So maybe the film only has a $50 million budget, and half of it's spent on The Rock, but they know they'll probably do $100 million total as a result between DVDs and theatrical and international. The way that it's probably packaged made sense. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have done it, right? But I think both scenarios are super kind of crazy.
Well, it's kind of funny you see the numbers on Rampage, the current movie that he's in. It is trickling towards $400 million worldwide. It looks like it's going to be a break-even scenario for the studio, maybe even a small profit out of it. But it might be, when all is said and done, the highest-grossing video game adaptation of all time. But even at that's the case, and it's barely a break-even product at best. That's attributed to The Rock, because it obviously didn't get that high of reviews. So the box office earning power of The Rock is still there, and still, I think it's going to be tested with Skyscraper coming up later this summer. But right now, you can't deny the power that The Rock has, and obviously the people of Red Notice, correct?
Yep.
Okay, Red Notice. See, it was slipping my mind as well. So it's so memorable that the $22 million they thought of dishing out was justified, although is for an extra $500K, you can go ahead and I'll support on my social media any stuff that's out there, man.
Yeah. I don't know.
Check's in the mail, right?
It checks in the mail. So the check is definitely in the mail there for you. The other two figures that they mentioned was Patty Jenkins goes up to $9 million from $3 million for Wonder Woman 2, which is nice to see. And
well deserved.
Chris Pratt gets $10 million for Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and Bryce Dallas Howard gets $8 million. Any thoughts on those two?
Well, you would like to see equality when it comes to pay and whatnot, but a lot of people are there to see Chris Pratt. A lot of people were invested in actually seeing Jurassic Park because Chris Pratt was jumping into the series. I think that's what helped boost the original reboot even more was his presence in the film. I it would be nice if they were both paid equally. I would think that's a little bit more fair situation. But seeing the fact that he is more of a household name, would probably, at this point in time, I'd probably say that's kind of justified in a way. But I'd like to see more diversity. I'd like to see more equal pay if that's the case. But if it would have been him and say Jennifer Lawrence again, or who is the top, one of the top paid female artists, or one of the top grossing, let's say Scarlett Johansson for instance. If it was Scarlett Johansson, I would have expected at least 10 to 10, if not her a little bit more as well.
Well, I mean, I really wonder what it comes down to. Is Pratt getting more screen time? Is he doing some stunts? Like, I'm okay with a discrepancy in the pay between the two. I just want it justified. I don't want them to have same amount of screen time, same amount of commitments, same amount of press to do, and then it be different figures. Because that's when it's not fair. They're both pretty integral to the film.
But
they should get
what
paid
I
accordingly.
ask you this: people identify sometimes going to a film because of its star. Obviously, he has a larger name than Bryce Dallas Howard at this point in time, although that could quickly change, as you know, in the movie industry. Do you think there's any justification to that?
Yeah, but I think that's just one small factor on top of everything. When you're talking about a film that is a two-hander, it's different. Now, when you're talking about something like Red Notice, when it's going to be built around The Rock as your main character, it's different. He's going to be the draw. It's clear he's the lead. He's the main guy. So it's a little bit different in that regard too.
But also, is there any back end money? Did they mention that as any points on the deal?
No, they just mentioned the salary up front. It really didn't break down too much. Just said 10 and 8 respectively. And the author of the article mentioned some of the things that you said as well. It would be nice to see something a little bit to, get it even.
I would like to see it get even, but I understand the realities of Hollywood still, and name value still in that industry accounts for something. Those are just as far as numbers are concerned. Like for instance, Sandra Bullock, she's coming out in Ocean's 8 with her movie. Who do you think is going to get the top billing and the largest paycheck in that movie? Her, because she has a history of box office hits behind her. She has a name value going on, maybe over even the other stars that are out there. So,
and when's the last time she had a movie come out though that those other stars could easily fight back with? When's the last time she had a movie came out that did well?
Well, the one with George Clooney, the one with Melissa McCarthy.
The one with George Clooney, the one with Melissa McCarthy. These household names that you keep dropping of these films that are undeniable, that are on everybody's library. The one with, that's my favorite movie. The one with has a great cast.
How about The Heat with Melissa McCarthy? How about that?
No, that movie's trash. You know that movie's trash.
But it made a lot of money at the box office.
Yeah, well, The One With. That's my new favorite movie that you like.
Oh, fair enough. Gosh, you're always testing me on this stuff, man.
That's true. Moving on. Next thing I want to talk about is Arrested Development. I don't know if you're a fan of this show at all. You are? Okay.
Somewhat. I watched it on Fox, have not caught the Netflix shows yet. I intend to, but I know there's some trouble in paradise as far as the reimagining of the show and bringing it back for a full season. Is that correct?
Well, season 5 is around the corner. It drops at the end of May, I believe. I think it's the 29th or so. But there was a lot to talk about a year or so ago when season 4 originally launched. Season 4 was drastically different than seasons 1, 2, and 3. And that's because it was originally 15 episodes, and each episode was about 30 minutes long and focused on a single character in the show compared to your typical cross-cutting storylines. So, since they've been getting season 5 ready, Mitch Horowitz, the creator and EP and often director and writer of it, went back and recut the original 15 episodes at 30 minutes. And now I believe it's 22 episodes at 22 minutes long, more or less. So it feels more like the other 3 original seasons. It's narratively mixed now, again, if you can, which is why they're calling it a remix. Where this comes up as a big pain point is the actors want further compensation since they were supposed to be paid per episode. Fox says they have the right to re-edit the episodes that already aired. So who's right? Because these actors are now appearing in more episodes than they were originally contracted for. They're all basically pitched as, okay, you're going to be in one episode, we're going to pay you this. Now they're in 22.
Well, I think it might come down to a court of law suggesting it, but I agree with the actors on this side. I think if you're adjusting the actual episodes and adjusting the amount and appearances, and you're adding minutes into the actual mix here, because you're going to have to off of what was in the cutting room floor and putting it back in, I think that the actors are inclined to be favored in this scenario, because you have a situation where these actors, they were under the premise that this would just be out in 30-minute episodes. Now you're adding 7 more episodes into the mix. Hey, that's, if I was the actor on the show, I'd want to get paid for it.
Now, normally I would tend to agree with you here, Gerald, but here's the problem. These episodes aired already in the promised form and made their kind of commitment. They were true to the contracts. The 15 episodes went out as promised. That was that. In terms of the recut, I think it said less than 2 or 3 minutes total for the entire series was added from the cutting room floor. And the stuff that was added were alternate angles from scenes that were covered in other areas. So really not a ton of new stuff. Once it's out there in broadcast, it fulfilled the contract, and Fox owns that footage, and they had paid the actors for their due. It's not unlike, special editions of different movies coming out. Should Harrison Ford get more money every time another version of Blade Runner hits the shelf because it's been recut? Probably not, right? I think this is kind of along those same lines. Had the actors been paid and told one thing, and then it come out as 22 episodes instead of the 15, then I think I would be a little bit more on the actor side here, saying, hey, this is what we were told. This is what's going on. We need to figure this out. And I'm sure something could be figured out. Every problem can be solved with money, they say. But,
that could lead to a situation that if the series is successful on Netflix, that if they want to bring it back for another season, those actors can hold out just because of that issue.
Who knows what's going to happen after season 5, which is already in the can and done. Whether it gets greenlit again or not, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly when season 4 came out. I want to say it was in the middle of 2016 or so. So it's been 2 years between seasons, so it might just not come out at that point. Who knows?
Who knows? But like I said, it is truly a successful product on Netflix, and Netflix wants to continue doing the series. They may have a hard time in doing so just because of the fact that these actors, and we've seen it before on television shows that have collectively got together to hold out for more money. The Simpsons, Big Bang Theory, just to name a couple.
And of course, the Friends debacle, the famous $1 million an episode, everybody getting paid equally.
Exactly, and that's something right there, because they see the residual effects of syndication, and they see the residual effects of watching these shows on different avenues at different times and whatnot. And they're now actually becoming more progressive about what's going on with today's technology and the future. So they're just becoming more aware of what's, how they can go ahead and get their share of the marketplace.
I agree. Speaking of marketplaces, one genre that always excites people for at least one weekend, and everybody's got a favorite that they remember, and maybe their first one or the one that affected them the most, is horror. And horror movies are as scary as the face Gerald just made me over our YouTube Hangouts discussion here. It seems to be coming back in a really big way. I mean, I guess I can announce at this point that I've actually been hired to work on a horror project, so it'll be interesting to delve into that world again as a writer-director and build that out. I'm sure you'll be hearing new tidbits.
Unearthly 2. They're still unearthly.
Unearthly 2, Electric Boogaloo. No, it's a new project, which is cool. And when I know more about it, I'll be able to share it with you. But because of this and on all the different news that's out there, it's been catching my eye a lot more. Fangoria is back as a print magazine quarterly now, which is cool. there was a recent quote saying the new Pet Cemetery remake will be the scariest adaptation of all Stephen King's work. I mean, we've talked about Stephen King with Castle Rock on Hulu is making the waves. Vincenzo Natali was just brought on to adapt In the Tall Grass for Netflix, which is a short film or a short story by Stephen King as well, where people stop their car at the side of the road and they hear voices from a field and they get lost in the field, and it's a weird time-space conundrum thing. And he'd been trying to get that made forever. Are we experiencing like another Stephen King boom here? I felt like the 80s had a ton of Stephen King movies come out, and then the 90s and the early 2000s quieted down. But between Pet Cemetery, In the Tall Grass, Gerald's Game coming out on Netflix already in 1922, and Doctor Sleep as well, the sequel to The Shining, slated to make it to the big screen. It feels like we're enjoying the Stephen King universe once more.
I think so as well, but it comes to at the point where not only are you able now 20, 25 years later to remake some of those properties, like you were saying, Pet Cemetery, and The Stand, and some others, and make them effective for today's audience. But you have a lot of those leftover projects he's created over the years, and a lot of those stories that he's created since then, and now are jumping on that, and because people are appreciating Stephen King even more. Mr. Mercedes was a big hit for the Audience Network. That series is coming back for a second season. I thoroughly enjoyed that. There were some differences from the book I would have liked to seen played out differently, but I will say that Brendan Gleeson, Brendan Gleeson, his performance as Bill Hodges in that series was just truly incredible, and as Bill Hodges. So hopefully we will actually be able to see a true Bill Hodges trilogy on the screen. So that's just one of the Stephen King properties that has come out over the recent months. Like you said, Gerald's Game and obviously which did so huge with audiences. And I think it comes down to it being such a box office success that now everybody, and you know, Rob, being in the industry,
I know,
they see a hot property and everybody else has to jump on it. Like, for instance, with Ready Player One, it's garnered over $500 million. So what happens next? His next story, Armada, that gets snatched up, and now that's something's going to be done with that, and so on. So, they always like to jump on a hot potato and see what they can do to take as much out of it, as many other like products that are from that same individual, as much as they can out of it. And yes, there was a period of time where Stephen King products were not made quite as often as they once were. I think after Shawshank Redemption, there may have been almost like a lull of Stephen King products and whatnot. But he's now back again, and he's now back again strong. And I think audiences are the better for it, because most of these Stephen King properties that are made these days are made with a little bit more care than what we've seen in the past, because there have been some truly awful Stephen King adaptations in the past. I'm going to let you know right now. That's just my opinion, but I think you and I both have seen a lot of Stephen King garbage when it comes to the TV stuff and movie stuff that's out there that was put out in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I think the 80s was like the old gold rush land grab for give me one Stephen King property so I can make it, and some did not work out. Some were memorable, most were not.
Well, even the It miniseries that was reshown around the time that the It movie came out, that by today's standards just looks truly laughable and looks
but I think there's a charm to it, and I think Stand By Me has a charm to it as well, and I think Pet Cemetery and Cujo are good. I mean, Stephen King doesn't like the Kubrick version of The Shining, but the miniseries version is not good, I think.
I know he wasn't exactly thrilled with the reimagining for Ready Player One out of that scene. So, and in fact, I myself, I didn't think that was hot.
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. But I do love your new catchphrase: "Jump on the hot potato," because usually you pass the hot potato, you don't jump on it.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, no. People want to jump on this hot potato because it's, like you said, it came out to big numbers, and everybody wants to follow in suit with Stephen King properties, which is great, because if you read his stuff, he has done some great work out there. And and the audiences, if they're done correctly, are all the better. And if again, I know you talked about Gerald's Game and some of the other recent projects, but if you can find it out there, look for the Mr. Mercedes series from the Audience Network. It is definitely worth watching, and I think it's a great view, a great time watching it, and it does have a lot of similarities from the book. And I think it just really was a solid job, and I'm glad they're coming back for season 2.
I'll have to check it out. I don't know anything about Mr. Mercedes, so I will. I'm always on the lookout to check out some Stephen King, and I wonder if a lot of his more dramatic stuff is going to get snapped up too, like in the vein of Shawshank and Stand by Me, like I mentioned, or The Green Mile.
I don't think Shawshank will ever be redone.
But I wonder if more of his books of that ilk, instead of the horror vein, are going to get put on the silver screen because of that hot potato.
This is true because of that hot potato, but the Bill Hodges trilogy, for anybody out there reading that loves reading Stephen King books, I recommend it highly. It does have a tinge of horror. It does have a tinge of modern terrorism and horror to it, but yes, it is a lot of it is a part of a detective novel that you don't see Stephen King write every day, as far as that's concerned. So it was actually kind of neat reading it from that angle, from those 3 books.
For people that are really big fans of Stephen King, I urge you to actually check out Stephen King on Writing, which is his book about how to write and what he believes in writing and the ways to write. The first 25% of it or so is actually kind of like his life story, and I listened to it, the audiobook, and he narrates it, and it was very fascinating to hear him talk about his childhood and all these little elements that actually you could pick apart were in these other stories that he had written and how they were seeded. But he basically gives you the whole rundown from when he was a little kid all the way until he was starting to do really well, and his trouble with addiction and whatnot, and how that complicated the writing process, and it all informs about how he became a writer and who he was. And again, even if you're not really interested in the craft of writing, hearing him talk about his background as a writer and who he was and what his childhood was very fascinating. So definitely check that out. It's on audible.com. You can find it out there.
And I know he's done some collaborations with his sons, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Yeah, In the Tall Grass is one of those collaborations, for example, with one of his sons.
Can't wait to see that on the screen.
So this leads to the big question of the week. I don't know if we have that segment yet. Cosmic Crossfire's question of the week. But we'll have it this week at least. I'll forget about it next week.
I'm sorry, no graphics are going to be involved.
Question of the week. What makes for a good horror movie? What's the perfect recipe, in your opinion?
I think suspense. I think A Quiet Place actually did a great job of trying to build that suspense, and rather than just trying to jump scare you, as so many of them do. Although, Rob, I think that's also something a lot of people are jumping on when it comes to those small market, small budget horror movies, those jump scare fests, which don't really need necessarily a great plot, but a great trailer that they do need. And obviously you get those at least first 2-week numbers at the box office. So that seems to be really important now these days, to see under $20 million horror movie out there. But when it comes to a great horror movie, I think it's building the characters and building that suspense into something more substantial, and not maybe limiting the scares to a selected few that are really poignant, that have some oomph to it, as opposed to just trying to go ahead and do a jump scare every 5 minutes.
Well, that's interesting, and I asked the question of the week mainly because I'm doing some research for the horror film that I've been brought on to make. I wouldn't even call it horror necessarily. It's psychological, it's suspense, it's thriller, it's of that genre. So I mean, it all kind of falls.
Those are the ones that get me. Yeah. Those are the ones I can connect with on horror movies. I mean, like I said, some of these fly-by-night, low-budget horror flicks that do very well in their first couple weeks, I usually don't connect with very well, because you see the jump scares coming every 5 minutes, and you know it's coming, and it's just like, okay, been there, done that. It's boring.
Yeah, we're hoping to do something that is very tense, intense, full of suspense, and just dripping with atmosphere, just oozing It's a kind of world that draws you in to just envelop you. So that's what we're aiming for.
So, in other words, you're going to try and do something scary to Jay.
Uh, Jay's not involved in this one at all, but who
No.
knows if he's my victim?
There you go. There you go. He's always your victim in some form of fashion.
Some form or another. So yes, but that'll do it for me this week on the Cosmic Crossfire. Crossfire.
Crossfire, indeed. If you want to reach out to us and ask a question, or you want us to go ahead and maybe share a topic that we can discuss on the show, please share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. And again, if you get a chance, please, please, please support today. Any amount is greatly appreciated on the Kickstarter project Galaxy Hope. Just go to Kickstarter.com and support Galaxy Hope today. You'll be glad you did. Rob?
Oh, yeah, I agree. Please check us out, Kickstarter.com, Galaxy Hope. The more backers we have, the more prominent it shows up on Kickstarter, and the more that those social media shares matter as well. So please throw $10, secure yourself a downloadable copy, DRM free, shiny HD. You're going to love it. Trust me.
And you said you were going to, if the project comes to fruition, it'd be shot 4K. Is that correct?
We hope that it'll be shot in 4K at this point going forward. There will be some 2K footage and probably some mixed media, depending on some of the other sources we pull, but natively 4K for the thrust of it.
Oh, couldn't get any better than that. So you got to
crispy clean,
just like a hot potato.
Something like that.
Something like that. So support it today. Galaxy Hope on Kickstarter. Rob, as always, it's been great having you on the program in the middle of the Cosmic Crossfire, and of course, right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.